Hello and thank you for joining us again on Autistic Radio, which is sponsored by Coldpack. Coldpack.co.uk is the place for physiotherapists, osteopaths and chiropractors to get the best cryotherapy cold pack, which also has their details printed on the pack to advertise their practices. If you use the website, you will be supporting us here in our work at Autistic Radio. But you're waiting for the show, and Harry's not here today, but capably left in the hands of Ray and Teresa. Hi Ray, are you ready to take the stand for the poem?
Yeah, good evening all. In Harry's absence, we have a poem up first from our colleague and contributor here, Robbie Prosser, written in 2002 and entitled Looking for Yesterday. Looking for yesterday, where has it gone? Where are the happy days? Where have they gone? Where are the carefree days when the future looked bright? I look in the mirror for a face I once knew, but instead of that face, there's an older one instead. And where are the friends that I once knew so well? If I saw them now, would I recognise their face? I'm still looking for yesterday, but it's just memories now. What do people think?
I think it's beautifully written. It starts out with that pattern of where has it gone, but then breaks away in the second half to this lovely irregularity, that universal feeling of seeing your face staring back at you and wondering who you are. It's a beautiful way that it ends too, and wondering who if you would recognize other people too. So I love that ending.
Yeah, I like it in the true sense of poetry, or one of the better senses of poetry. It's a meditation. And we all have these moments where we meditate slightly on existence and memory.
Yeah, I think you're right there. It's putting out words that I wouldn't have been able to put out myself. I think that's what poets do, and that's what Robbie's doing here. I've had those feelings. I've stared into the mirror. I've looked and thought, wow, that's not my face. That's a different one. And the same kind of thoughts have gone into my head. It's a nicely balanced, wistful nostalgia when it's read out loud. But looking at it, there's a bit more in there that we can think about. So I think it might prompt me to think things I may not have thought as well. And that's what poetry's for, isn't it?
Do you know that the mirror is not really a true reflection? It's a kind of inversion.
Yeah, it's always a surprise when you see yourself on video rather than the face that you look at yourself in a mirror, the other way around.
I'm curious about Robbie having this poem from 2002 that he remembers in the sense of memory and found again for us today, possibly in response to subjects we've maybe discussed here.
I think that's very interesting that it was from 2002. And I think one of the poems that I put up, and I think one of the poems that another member, GR, put up, were also about that, length of time ago. And I wonder if these thoughts remain universal to us, or these meditations.
Yeah, there's a real sense of loss, isn't there, in it? And that really makes me feel uncomfortable when you point out that it's 2002 and we know the poet now. It's 2026, 24 years later. That's a long period of time to be feeling and experiencing that loss. And to choose it now to share with us as an intimate sharing thing, sharing your words, your poetry, the things that something that you've worked long and hard about that comes from you. That decision making, that that feels like a tough thing for me. It's a tough thing to notice it's 2002.
It's almost like Robbie's put this away for a rainy day, this one, and found it again, or maybe remembered it and thought it's useful now. It still works. It's like time is maybe not linear, it's circular. Things you do when you're young are perfectly valid now as they were then. Maybe he was speaking to himself now back then in this poem. And we were all maybe in our 30s then. And of course, it's a year after one of the major events in Western culture. So there was a lot of self-reflection about the world back then. But maybe seems a more personal poem. We all stare in the mirror. The next post is by Autism Awareness, who are a non-profit organisation, health and wellness website, sport and recreation. The post is titled Neurodivergence Partner Choices. And it's a picture, no text. The picture has text within it, and it's speaking about autistic choices and partners. So let's try and wade into this one. The male figure, chances of choosing a partner with autism, 11 times. Of choosing a partner with schizophrenia, 8 times. And of choosing a partner with bipolar disorder, 4 times. The female character, chances of choosing a partner with autism 10 times. Social phobia 7.5 times. Generalized anxiety disorder 4.5 times. So this is kind of like a league table of choices between male and female with autism. Underneath that, it extends it out into attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. And again, the male, his chances of choosing a partner with autism 9.25 times, ADHD 7.5 times, social phobia 4 times. The female, her chances of choosing a partner with ADHD 7.5 times, schizophrenia 3.5 times, social phobia 3.5 times. So this is quite an unusual post. There's a lot in it, statistics wise, where they're drawn from I don't know, and how it relates to the poster as well, who seem to be autism awareness, relating to sport and recreation, health and wellness, right? So they're looking into partner choices within the autism and ADHD brackets. There's a lot to deal with there. What do people think?
Yeah, I think we were going to skip this one because it's not available to everybody.
So why didn't you tell me?
It's in the text.
Yeah, I didn't know how to deal with it, sorry. But since you've read it out, why don't I comment on it? This is my thought. I I find in just maybe this is just me, but I find infographics like this where they've obviously taken a whole bunch of information, probably from some source like a study or something, and they've tried to summarize it visually in this quadrant system. Perhaps it's just me, but I found it lost its meaning. I just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Teresa. It's it's propaganda. Having those statistics just written there is clickbait, and I want my facts with a bit of background, and I want my facts with a bit of explanation. This isn't good enough as a piece of advocacy. It's not good enough.
It's meaningless.
The problem is we don't normally um, say negative things about the things that we share here on Autistic Radio. We find it unhelpful. Um, and there was a bit of a misunderstanding here. I think the post has actually been deleted um, from our feed, but yeah, let's decide whether it stays in the edit to the person who's editing it.
Shall I read the next one? Or introduce the next one?
Absolutely. That you don't ask permission, you take control.
Okay. I chose this interesting one by um, the poster Lisa Marie Wooding, who is an author. And I just wanted to say there's a photograph of a young woman. I'm not sure how old, but you know, she's looking directly into the camera. I think probably in a selfie, and it's sort of like she's bearing all with her expression on her face. And I can't read it all to you because it's very long, but I'll hit some of the highlights. She says, I don't usually put things like this out here, but I need to name what this feels like. Lately, I've been in what I can only describe as an autistic burnout. Not just tired, completely depleted. And like she has nothing she can give to life, a demanding life. And she talks about the picture which she took of herself on Mother's Day when it sort of hit hard with her. And if you're interested, you should go have a look and read some more about it. But she's just really talking about coping with so many things in life, which seems more made so much more difficult by having this thing, autistic burnout. And she really just wants to share and say, if you're in a similar place, she sees you. Does anybody have a comment on this?
Although I have different things going on in my life, I can relate to this lot of being feeling there's nothing more to give and being burnt out.
I'll just read out the last paragraph which I highlighted, which is, in a sense, a positive conclusion to this post. She says, I've now reduced my medication so the world can see the real me, and I'm now doing less, concentrating on me and my family. I'm planting vegetables. I'm sitting at my desk. I'm enjoying the little moments like watching the horses in the field opposite our house. I'm participating in a lot more cat cuddles. If you're in a similar place, I see you. It does make me reflect on... Sorry, is someone else speaking? Okay. It makes me reflect on... What does it make me reflect upon? Um, yeah, are people doing more these days than they've ever done? Or do we just feel like we're doing more than we've ever done? And of course that doesn't negate anybody's um, autism or neurodivergence affecting their ability to be in this world.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I think I'm interrupting.
No disinterrupting. If they speak first and there's silence otherwise, please just continue.
Um, when I summarized it and didn't read out that part, I was wondering now, it's up to any individual how they handle their own medication. But, I wouldn't make a particular comment on that except to be careful. But the things she's doing, like the planting vegetables, we've talked about this nature idea, sitting without great expectation at her desk and enjoying these moments. They all seem so natural, watching the horses and, cuddling with a cat. They do seem very healing. I think my thoughts on life being busier, yeah, maybe it is. But let's think in history, because she's talking about being a mother and having this revelation on Mother's Day. Mothers used to have, in some periods of time, a whole lot of children. you know, in some cultures, maybe 12 or more, especially if they were rural or, um, for various other reasons. So I was looking at it through this lens. Every one of us will look at it through our own lens, and it was of layering autism on top of her life, and how that is the thing that is going to burn her out. Not too many people in the world might realize that. Like, that's the hitch, I'm thinking, from my perspective.
Yep, I'm really really in with following what you're saying there, Teresa, because the one thing on top of all the other things in her life, she's got autistic kids, she's a mum in this world, um, she's got perimenopausal symptoms, which is a big deal, um, and then she's got this bombshell. She's been diagnosed with autism. Somebody from the outside has dropped this in on her life, and then they've just left her with it because that's what they do. The system is diagnose as many people as you can, but there's no follow up. Cause a complete disruption in people's lives and leave them helpless. Some people find us some kind of help in that huge gap, but what I'm thinking is that all the way around the world there are pushes for more and more diagnoses irresponsibly ignoring the consequences, because it was an enormous thing in my life to realize my own autism. And way before my diagnosis, that was a very big disruptive thing without anybody to help from the outside. It's not okay. If that's you out there, then use us. Use peer support groups. Find somebody else autistic in your own life to talk it over with. Jesus fucking Christ. The misunderstanding of the neurotypical world has impacts on us. It's not okay.
I'd also like to say, at the end, she was so generous to say to the readers of her post, if you're in a similar place, I see you. And I think what we want to say is that we see her.
In the text, Robbie says, it takes years to get diagnosed and then there's no support. In the text, Robbie says, so-called support is actually more about compliance. And that's where we end up with various programs that look very much like training schemes and conversion therapies. If you're autistic out there, you can have a positive autistic life. You do not have to be somebody trained out of who you are. It's good to be your own autistic person What makes it difficult is the society around you, not you yourself. You're good enough as an autistic person. And hopefully over years, it's something you can come to terms with and find beauty in. I find beauty in my own autism, and I don't want to be anything else.
Would you say, Jules, that before diagnosis, things were more integrated, you know? Before you have a reason for things, you were just yourself. That autistic self, now diagnosed, was more integrated into your general personality back then. And of course, the whole idea of diagnosis is to expect or gain or access support. But I wouldn't say that expectation is always possible. But what I'm reflecting on is the pre-diagnosis integrated personality got on with things, possibly suffered immensely, or not immensely, but generally through interactions, as most people do. But that integration may now be lost or separated out into a category, leading to more stress. Is that kind of what you were hinting at?
I don't know, Ray. I wasn't going through life thinking I had a problem. And when my wife sat me down to explain her theories about neurodiversity to me, I was neither shocked nor particularly upset about it. It seemed to make sense, but then I had to go through a whole sense of testing out the theory and fact checking, which autistic people will recognize themselves. We don't take things on face value. The diagnosis to me was pretty irrelevant. I went through that because I thought there might be something out there that would have interest to me, a service which turned out not to exist, but something similar came along later and turned out to be inadequate. And the service that put me through a little program eventually to explain my own autism only had value because there was an autistic person there reinterpreting the material and not taking the material they had from their organisation at face value. They were, by that time, I knew enough about my own autism to be a part of it with them, to help other people and discuss it with them and bring out the kind of realities that they themselves and me myself had come to, the conclusions that we'd come to. Realizing my own autism has been a positive experience for me. A diagnosis has been an irrelevance. Does that get anywhere near what you're asking, Ray?
Yes, it does. I'm just noticing that there are comments from Catherine Roberts. Do you see them, and should we voice them?
We would normally put them in the full edit anonymously, and apologise to Catherine for that. Your name will be cut out in the edit. I would read them as a commenter, and they're good comments, so let's get them in the edit.
Can you read them? I can't see them.
Okay, I'll do it. I won't read them all. I'll just read the ones I think fit the conversation. in the comments after the poetry section, poetry allows me to say what I'm feeling because I quite literally can't get the words out. An autistic person. And they also comment, I completely agree. It saddens me that grief and loss is not addressed post late diagnosis. It doesn't mean you don't want or hate the diagnosis. It means a huge amount of reflection. Reflection of what was or could have been. It's trauma and it's just overlooked. Poetry in their own way. And then the same person is commenting to say that they agree with what people have been saying. Beautifully said, they say.
Would anybody mind if I go back and answer the question that Ray asked Jules after we read um, the author Wooding's post about autistic burnout? Um, it wasn't about burnout, but it was about Ray. You asked a really important question. It was whether being late diagnosed a person, well, in particular, you were asking Jules, did he feel more integrated before? Whether we say diagnosis or coming to the realization. Well, I feel more integrated now, and the way it went for me was I had no idea that this was a possibility about myself, but I think in a stereotypic autistic way, I just don't usually entertain, self-diagnosis. It was pointed out to me in a terrible situation, but then I waited after that for 2 years to be evaluated. Even for those 2 years, I didn't think one way or another whether I was or I wasn't autistic. I mean, I went and I read everything I could, but I just said, well, I don't know. I either am or I'm not. And then when I had my diagnosis, I was either obtuse or just in shock at first. I think I might have been in shock. My first feeling was not integrated. It was a grief to have lived for 60 years without having this knowledge or the correct operating manual, as I still will say, is my feeling. But now it's been we're coming upon 2 years in July, and I feel more integrated now than I have in my life because before this diagnosis, I had other diagnoses and never felt coherent, never felt like anything cohesive or holistic was happening to me in terms of medically, or I haven't got a day worth of support, but I don't care. I got that diagnosis, and maybe I'm just a black and white person and I need someone to say that's what you have. And here, I'm still on a waiting list to go to a group. So I live in Canada. There isn't really any support for adults yet. I hope maybe someday there will be. But I'm working it out, and especially find it to be very helpful to come here.
I think it's all about peer support, really. And what we really need is the professionals to facilitate peer support rather than trying to control the situation themselves. Robbie says in the text that he found the places where he is accepted as he is. And for him, it was about acknowledging why he struggled and understanding that he was not broken. Ray says that that's the integration that he was commenting on. Robbie also says, and this is a lovely, beautiful piece, he says, realizing I am autistic was a positive experience, but the so-called support was not a positive experience. I realized that not everyone will like me. It no longer matters to me. If there is a problem, I have found places where I am accepted exactly as I am. Ray says, I don't want to bury my former self. Robbie says that I no longer people please. He also says, I found support from Indigenous well-being and Indigenous peer support circles. And also here, Robbie, give us a plug. I think that's interesting what Ray says there. He might want to expand on it. I don't want to bury my former self. So maybe the question he was asking me is there a previous self and a former self? I don't think there is for me. And actually, one things a professional has said to me that has been helpful was at my diagnosis, and it was the last words that the professional said. As I left the meeting, she said, please remember you're still you. Nothing has changed. And that is a piece of wisdom.
Oh, that's good. Oh, I like that. It's just, I understand the talk about grief that people will, share. Sorry, I've got a dog howling in the background here. And when I heard that, I immediately thought up that phrase, am I grieving my former self? So in a sense, it was for myself a provocation, that phrase. And of course, I hesitated and thought, will I hit send? Will I hit send? I think, just hit it. So I hit send, and it's a provocation or a prompt, and it engages conversation.
It was a really good prompt, Ray, because I feel like I understand something better just hearing Jules and thinking about the answer, but I don't grieve my former self. I actually feel like if I never found out, I might have lived my whole life not understanding my entire self.
But I think the point that comes from the post is that it's destabilizing. A huge piece of knowledge that then leads to an investigation is incredibly destabilizing. So I felt that whole inquiry, that looking back, realizing things from the past, putting the framing of autism on so many relationships and experiences is a hard experience, and it's self-therapy to work out your own autism. I'm not convinced many therapists are helpful to help you on that journey. I am convinced that other autistic people can often be very helpful, but I'm not convinced that shouty advocacy and ban this and I'm traumatized that and wearing autism as some kind of no, I don't have the phrase for it. We'll cut that out in the edit. The other thing we'll cut out in the edit is whenever anybody asks for permission, because we don't ask for permission here. We just do. And dogs in the background, this is all cut out. dogs in the background, they won't be heard. We don't apologise. We just get on with it because it's all cut out in the edit.
Jules, is it like clubs and the rules? You know, it was like any time you have an experience of, joining a club, there's these rules that are expected, and usually it's very off-putting for a much needed kind of social interaction or emotional interaction. I'm also going to read a little bit of the text there because Robbie put a few phrases in and they're about support, and they kind of get summed up in his final comment, which is support does not have to be limited to people with the same diagnosis, the same age, the same gender, or the same culture. Do you want me to explain the joining clubs and the rules thing, Jules? Yeah? It's just what you were saying there. It's like this thing about advocacy and things like that. It's like once you realise who you are, you may want to then meet fellow minded people or people in a similar situation. And they're usually within strict organisations like clubs. So you join that club for what you are. And very often it's off putting because it has rules. And you didn't expect rules, you expected just to be with, I don't know, to explore yourself with other like minded people.
I think I knew where you were coming from. The first thing I thought was, oh, there's some kind of a saying. The first rule of whatever club is not to whatever, whatever. It's a movie quote that I can't recall, but anyway. And then I thought, um, maybe we are worried about that because of the whatever the neurotypical clubs rules. Then I thought, I remember when I was really just doing my research and trying to think if there was a group, which one would it be? And I was sort of narrowing it down to autistic radio. And I thought, I wonder if I, like, it was, am I autistic enough or am I something? But I know a lot more now than I used to. I think your questions are just really good today. Oh my goodness, but it's so hard to answer.
I keep coming across autistic spaces, and within a very short time, somebody tells me what some rule or other is. And I think, fuck off. Fuck off. I want a place where I can explore my own autism and other people can help me by talking about their own autism and who have different experiences. I want you guys to say different things to me so I understand them. And the lovely thing about you is none of you tell me off when I say things that are beyond the norm. And I hope I don't. No, I know I don't tell people off for explaining things that are out their norm as well. That's the essential thing for me. My autism is about my individual autism. I learn from other people and I learn about my own autism by them explaining their individual autism. But I don't see it as a rule book for me to follow. And to some extent, I'm uncomfortable with this concept that has been a long-term concept, though I know it's useful for you, Teresa, about the wrong manual. Because for me, life has no manual. We are all working out what life is and then we die. There is no manual to life, whether you're neurotypical or autistic. And anyone that tries to put some kind of manual on you is a bully.
It's a metaphor. I'm sticking with it. It's my experience.
Exactly. And that's beautiful.
Um, should we fit one more post in right now? I'll begin. The next post is by Autism Awareness, and they also have an infographic, only this one seems to be working quite well. The point of this that you can't see, but you can go check it out on Autistic Radio's Facebook page or Autism Awareness Facebook page. They're saying the autism spectrum is not a line from less to very autistic. It's a wheel of social differences, sensory sensitivities, emotional regulations, and more. So high functioning and, whatever don't work. What works is in this wheel, almost like the color spectrum wheel, this is how this looks. You can be sort of like less green, more yellow, all red, a little bit of blue. And then each one of those pieces of pie in the wheel is social differences is one, interests another, repetitions, sensory sensitivities, emotional regulation, perception, executive functioning, and other. So, you know, I, I, I don't think we have enough time in the day to try and figure out who we all are, but it looks like a more interesting way to look at it. And we've talked about this as a group before, but we didn't have the advantage of looking at the infographic that's coming to us from the perspective of Autism Awareness's post. I mean, there could be other ways to explain this, but this is much better than thinking about a continuum. What are your thoughts?
For me, it's probably one of the most important posts because all these labels lead to inaccuracies and assumptions and not getting the right support. And for me, I would probably diagnosed with actually Asperger's, which will probably now be defined as high functioning. I know this would lead to them claiming I had less needs, but if my needs are not met as they haven't been, it leads to crisis. It's probably one of the most, and there's a lot of things that are not mentioned about, like people often talk about the being oversensitive, but I don't hear much about people saying about the undersensitive, and lot of the things that they push, like sensitive labels, I don't have. And so this is a very, very important thing because they actually need to actually listen to people that are the experts, the people that are autistic, their families and parents, rather than using all these labels and making assumptions.
It's very well put. Anyone else? Aside from me thinking now that it looks like the Trivial Pursuit pie.
I'm always a bit wary of, science's categorization, you know. But this is helpful as in certain contexts. I was thinking earlier about how we were discussing, being predictable or being changeable. And this gives the possibility of change within one's view of oneself or others. And we also discuss poetry here, and so I kind of lean more towards a more poetic interpretation of people, if that's possible. I mean, in a sense here, if you look at this chart as being like the colour wheel, as you said, Teresa, in art, the way combinations can happen in art and figurative painting, say, is a possible way of seeing a metaphor for relating to other people and knowing them. This is it's almost like it's a judgment wheel, isn't it? It's like a way of judging people. Or is it a way of self-expression? I don't know.
I would say self. I think if you could, like, if you came upon a person who was saying, who was only seeing it in this linear way, like you're not very autistic, which is a really ridiculous thing to say. We know that, but it's hard for people outside. Like, maybe I think it would be useful in some contexts. I don't think it's the most important thing on earth, but in the way that Robbie described it is, because this does lead to a lot of trouble for him. That there's, so I think it could be useful to just say to somebody, hey, look, I don't know if this one version of it is the only way you could show it, but I like it.
I'm kind of looking at it and trying to figure out how it works. It's like opposing colours. Does that mean anything? Are they opposite ends of an experience? Say we've got social differences opposed by emotional regulation. We've got perception opposed by repetitions. Does that matter? I don't know how to use this.
I actually think I caused that thought by saying it looks like the color wheel. So my guess is probably not. I think because you know color theory, you're thinking that. I think it's probably more like my other ridiculous comment that could be misleading, where now I'm thinking it looks like the Trivial Pursuit pie. Like, if history is across from sports, I don't think it means anything. Do you know what I mean?
I'm a little bit of this and I'm a lot of that. But it changes every day, doesn't it? I've said this before. Am I having a flashback?
Maybe. I think when I think about it, of course there are fluctuations every day, but possibly you have like a baseline for the various things. I think it's more important that people know if you're not stereotypically one way or the other, you still deserve support.
Yeah, it's almost like the diagrams just don't matter. It's the sentiment in the post.
It could open up a conversation with somebody, um, like where you talk about how you have, you might not exhibit your autism with one stereotypic element, but that you do experience emotional regulation issues. But then you might not have any social differences because you're super highly masking. Do you know what I mean? I feel like it could be a good conversation tool with, let's say, a family member who, say, like an aunt or somebody, a cousin who isn't really understanding but would like to.
Yeah, I get that. That makes sense. There's also a humorous side to me that's seeing it like some kind of twister game.
Are you saying that Twister is a humanist?
Sorry, humorous.
Oh, there should be a hearing component on this chart because mine's not very good.
But misreading and misinterpretation is valid.
Just because you mask well doesn't mean you're not struggling. And
You're right, Robbie. It could be more profound. Like, you might have to recover more at night, and maybe that might lead to more self medication and a lot less life satisfaction or something like that. I see what you mean there.
if I go on a bus, no one will notice I'm struggling because I know that if I show any my distress, it's going to result in unhelpful interactions. So I have to pretend to be okay, but that doesn't mean I am okay. It's the same when all the children pretend to be okay at school so the parents don't have the hassle, but fall apart when they get home when there's no one looking, when they're safe.
Well put, Robbie.
It is really well put. It looks like we don't have time for another post today, and as usual, we often end up on a very um, meaningful comment. And I think what you just said, Robbie, was something really worthwhile to end our thoughts for the day. I'm just going to say this for the recording. I don't know how to end this in the eloquent way that Harry does, except for to say that Harry will be back next week to take back the helm of Harry's Facebook. I can't wait.
Harry, we kept your seat warm.
And thank you to all the people who post and allow us to share those posts. We'll be here next week and every week, every Sunday, both live and in an edited recording. Take care in Autism World.